Between 1962 and 1984, George Carlin appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson more than 130 times. In the mathematics of a television career, this is an extraordinary number. It means that for more than 2 decades, one of the most powerful men in American entertainment kept deciding, repeatedly, that this particular comedian was worth putting in front of the country. Then the decisions slowed. Then they stopped. The relationship that had built George Carlin's early career ended not with a conflict, not with a dramatic falling out, but with the quiet institutional withdrawal of an invitation that had once been nearly automatic. Understanding why requires understanding what Johnny Carson was, and what The Tonight Show was, and what it meant in 1962 to receive that invitation for the first time. Carson had taken over The Tonight Show in October 1962, the same year Carlin was beginning to build his solo career after the split from Jack Burns. The timing was precise in the way that fortunate timing often appears, in retrospect, to have been arranged. Carson was 36 years old and beginning to construct the institution that would define American late-night television for the next 3 decades. He was intelligent, careful, and possessed of a genuine comedic sensibility that made him an accurate judge of what was funny and what was not. He liked George Carlin. The early appearances were the appearances of a young comedian who was very good at what The Tonight Show needed: quick, precise, safe without being dull, observational without being uncomfortable. Carlin had the ability to build a bit from a single observation with an architectural efficiency that Carson found reliably satisfying. He would introduce a premise, develop it through unexpected turns, and deliver a punchline that felt both surprising and inevitable. This is the fundamental skill of stand-up comedy, and Carlin had it completely. Carson's endorsement operated, in the early 960 seconds, as the most efficient mechanism available for converting a working comedian into a nationally known one. The Tonight Show reached millions of households every night. A successful appearance, a set that landed cleanly, a moment at the desk afterward where the conversation went well, could move a career from regional to national in a single evening. Multiple successful appearances, accumulated over years, could make a comedian's name synonymous with a particular kind of quality. Carlin's name became synonymous with intelligence. That was Carson's specific endorsement, repeated over more than a decade of bookings. This is a comedian whose work is worth your attention. Not just funny, worth your attention. The distinction mattered. It placed Carlin in a category of performers who were doing something more than entertaining, who were asking their audiences to follow a line of thinking rather than simply to laugh and move on. The relationship had the texture of genuine mutual respect. Carson was not a man who performed warmth he did not feel. His cool precision was part of what made him effective as a host, and the moments when the precision gave way to actual amusement were legible because they were real. With Carlin, the amusement was real. Carson laughed at him in the specific way that people laugh when they are surprised, which meant the material was actually surprising him, which at The Tonight Show in the 1960 seconds and 1970 seconds was a significant achievement. The shift began somewhere in the early 1970 seconds, as Carlin's transformation from mainstream comedian to counterculture truth-teller became complete. The hair had grown, the suit was gone. The material was different, harder, more specifically targeted at the institutions and assumptions that The Tonight Show, by its very existence, represented. A comedy program broadcast on network television at 11:30 at night to a mass audience was not, and could not be, a platform for the kind of challenge Carlin was building his new career around. Carson understood this. He was not, at his core, an ideological man. He had his private views, which he kept carefully private, and his professional judgment, which was that The Tonight Show worked best when it held the center. The center, in this context, meant the comfortable, the accessible, the reliably entertaining. Carlin was moving away from the center on purpose. He had decided that the center was not where the interesting work was. The bookings continued through the 1,970 seconds and into the early 1,980 seconds, but they had a different quality. They were less frequent. The desk conversations, which had once been among the more animated moments in the show's schedule, became more careful. Carson was a precise man, and he understood precisely where the limits of his platform were. He liked Carlin. He could not always broadcast what Carlin had become. By 1984, the appearances had effectively ended. More than 130 visits over more than 20 years, and then a silence. Carlin had not been banned, had not said anything that created a formal rupture, had not done anything that required a public response. The institution had simply moved on. Its needs and his work had diverged past the point where the regular accommodation was possible. What Carson gave Carlin across those 130 appearances was the foundation of a national profile that made everything else possible. The sold-out theaters of the mid-1970s, the HBO specials, the cultural presence that allowed him to be heard, all of it was built on a base that The Tonight Show had provided. Without the years of Carson's endorsement, the transformation might still have happened, but the audience for it would have been smaller and slower to arrive. What Carson could not give him, what no network television platform was positioned to give any performer with Carlin's specific ambitions, was the room to do what he actually wanted to do. The Tonight Show required, by its nature, a version of Carlin that was compatible with mass broadcast. The version that was compatible with mass broadcast was, by the early 970 seconds, no longer the version Carlin was interested in being. He spoke about Carson with genuine warmth in later years. There was no bitterness in his account of the relationship, no sense that he had been failed by the institution or betrayed by the man. He understood the transaction. Carson had needed a certain George Carlin, had paid for that George Carlin generously and consistently for over 2 decades, and had stopped needing him when that version of George Carlin stopped being available. This was not unfair. It was the ordinary economy of television. Johnny Carson retired from The Tonight Show in 1992, 22 years after the bookings had begun to thin. He died in 2005. By then, the work he had helped launch, the George Carlin of the HBO specials, the late-career ferocity, the material that a generation of people would quote for decades, was fully formed and well documented. He had seen some of it. He had watched from a distance, as one watches the continued development of something one helped start. Whether he took satisfaction in that is not recorded. What is recorded is the 130 appearances, the years of consistent endorsement, the recurring invitation, the specific quality of attention that Carson brought to a comedian he found genuinely worth watching. 130 times Johnny Carson told the country, "This man is worth your time." He was right. He was right 130 times. And then the work that followed proved it 100 times more.